se toi ajoasento vähän uusi.
Ai joo, mikä näissä penkkikiinnissä? Mähän on sitä ihan.
Sepä sitä, koska mä oon ihan hyvä asusta.
Tossakin on penkkikiinnos. Meidänkin tossa toiseen suuntaan.
Onks mä auto? Joo.
Karretti. Karretti siihen.
No se on. Näin siltä vai?
Ei sitä.
Ajatellaan me samaa asiaa.
Ei sitä meikänä. Mä ajattelin. Nyt tahti liikkukaan. Nyt tahti jatkuu. Meneekö?
Se näkyy vähän pelmistä ja turbo tänne, tuo käännetään tonne päin, tuolla on 90 kurvia.
Welcome back to Sipa's Pimmer Garage. It's a new year and time to do something new. So this time we are starting out new project car. Like the previous ones, back there would be ready. But we have had this project car for some time already, but I haven't shown that publicly yet. Because I don't want to make video of showing something that we got and then it takes a year before anything actually happens to it. So I wanted to have something actually done for this car before posting any videos. But enough of that, and let's see what we got and then start working on it. And here we have this kind of thing. This is E81 118i that cost €1,000 because the N43 in this had snapped the chain during start. Or at least that's what the listing said. But when we investigated it, the exhaust cam actually had snapped bolt and nothing else. But yeah, we paid €1,000 for this 118i that has 278,000 kilometers on the clock. I think this was owned by some youngster. The front fenders are a bit damaged from the wider wheel setup and the bumpers have seen some shit. But that's all fine for the use case that we are planning for this. Would be just waste of money to pay extra for nicer condition car. The best thing in this that this is rust free. Or well, as rust free as this kind of 2008 1 series can be. In addition to the rust fenders, there is some rust underneath around the bolts and some surface rust on the rear subframe. But still, really small amounts of rust and we don't need to do anything for those. This is a big plus that we don't need to spend first 2 to 3 years welding this together. And we can start immediately with the mechanical side. And this is original M-Sport car. This has these M-Sport bumpers, which are a bit better looking than the normal moving bumpers. And this white color isn't the best one, but it's way better than the black that these usually are, especially the E87s. And this 2-door E81, or is it 3-door actually, is a lot better looking than the 5-door E87 is. Also, I really haven't seen these 2 or 3-door versions on the road where I live. As I said, this is a M-Sport, so it has the M-Sport interior. You can see the sport seats here and even the sport steering wheel. And this is manual too, so there's no extra work regarding that. Everything is already there. You can of course see that this has been driven quite a bit. These seats are a bit cracked and the steering wheel is really rough looking on the top. In addition to that, everything is really slimy and dirty. The person who had this didn't really bother cleaning this out. But considering our use case, none of that matters really. In the big picture, this is rather a nice condition car. The lights have been blacked out, the glass is tinted, and there were all sorts of young people tuning on this. But the main thing is that there isn't really rust, and this is good enough condition so that we can really start directly building this for drifting. And yeah, this has the M-Sport bumper also on the rear, and that is actually pretty good looking. But yeah, that's what we got, and currently when filming this, we have actually done quite a lot of stuff for this already. So, let's jump back a couple of months when Petri picked this up and did a lot of mechanical work on this. So let's see what Petri has been working, and I'll explain this more then, and what we are going to do with this. So let's jump to the videos that Petri has filmed. So yeah, Petri went and brought this to our garage from Joensuu using trailer, because the engine is blown and this cannot be driven. And once he got this to our garage, he immediately lifted this up to investigate everything and to remove the blown engine. The underside of the car looks quite good. Of course, some plastic panels are missing and broken, which is what to expect on BMWs at this age. And naturally the engine has been leaking oil so badly that it has spilled all over the engine bay and everything. But the best thing is that there's no rust damage to be seen anywhere. Or well, there is some on the rear subframe, but it's not bad at all. That subframe rusting out is a common problem in these 1 and 3 series cars, here where they salt the roads. But anyways, that's how it looks underneath, and next Petri started taking this apart, so that he can pull the broken N43 out. While we watch Petri working on this, let's talk a little bit about this project. So this is going to be drift missile for me and Petri. As good as we can make it for as cheap as we can build this. And that's the reason we went with the 1 series, because these are really cheap and light cars. And these share the suspension with the 3 series E90, E91, E92 and so on. So you have really good availability of beefier drivetrain components. And for cheap also. Pretty much opposite the situation that there is with the more common E36 and E46 chassis, which are also way more expensive to even buy. And those are also quite a rush package in addition to the rare and expensive big drivetrain parts. So when you are looking for cheap chassis, these E81s and especially the E87s are pretty much the best option currently. Another guideline that we will follow with this project is that we will try to use leftover parts from other projects that we already have in our garage. And that's actually where this project started originally, because Petri did build the M50 bottom end from the parts he found. So now that Petri got the N43 out, I can tell that we are not going to put any N engine back in this car.
No moottori.
N means no.
But the classic M50 turbo engine. A really basic setup, but more about that later. But yeah, now that we know what will go in the car, let's watch Petri to fabricate custom engine mounts and arms for this to fit the M50. There is one set that I know, which one you can buy if you don't want to do everything yourself, but that doesn't support the idea of using parts from our garage as much as possible. By the way, those urethane bushings are from my E36 rear suspension. To weld those engine arms at the correct spot, Petri dug up chunk M52 block, some oil pan, probably from E36, and bolted up the car's original transmission to that. Petri didn't have more videos about welding those, but that's how it looked when the engine was in there for good. And you will see the finished engine arms later when the engine actually is installed into the car. And talking about the actual engine. Here's the bottom end that Petri did put together for this project. This is the old M50 iron block from his E31. Also these Viseco pistons here were in that for a long time, and we never could make those pistons work properly in that. Well, this worked, but this was always smoking little bit. Little bit of blue smoke coming out when lifting off the throttle. So nothing serious, but still annoying. We did change the block and all sorts of things, and these pistons actually, these have been machined, or well, I did machine these to fit the normal M50 piston rings. So these don't have the Viseco rings anymore, but we couldn't get rid of the smoking. So Petri put together a totally new bottom end with new block, DP pistons and so on. And after that it hasn't smoked anymore. But here are now the old parts. I don't think it matters at all if the drift missile is smoking a little bit blue when you are lifting off the throttle. So this should be fine for that to use. And we will use this bottom end. Of course the 2.8 liter crank is still in Petri's car, and those are so expensive that it's not worth getting one for this kind of project. So this has been done with a really small budget, meaning that there's 2.5 liter crank and 140 mm M50 Vanos connecting rods. These connecting rods are actually quite sturdy and can easily handle this kind of setup. Which is, well, we are planning to have something between 400 and 500 horsepower in this. But this bottom end should handle way more than that. And as you can see, we didn't buy any new engine for this. But this is put together using all the discarded parts that we had. I have also bought few new parts. That car originally has the electric throttle, so that's what this engine will have too. So I have a P58 throttle body here. These are good for the budget, because these are like 5 euros a piece. Then I also have few used VHC coils here. The ECU will need smart coils, so we can't use the BMW coils that we have in storage. So I bought some used VHC coils from Ovoco, but let's see if we can find the rest of the missing parts on the shelves that we have here. And do we need to buy some parts and so on. We will try to use as much of the parts that we have to keep the cost down. Okay, here's our chunk pile of parts. Then firstly the head. Here's one head that was made for Petri's one. It has had pretty much everything done to it, or at least everything that makes sense. It has been ported and so on. But this has a small problem that this head is actually banana shaped. The gasket surface has been, of course, straightened out, but the cam surface is not straight anymore. I have actually used this head for many years and it has worked great. But Petri was too afraid to use this head, so it has been sitting here ever since. So we will use this head, because that one is actually dual Vanos head. Then one of those is cracked, one has big hole in it, and that one is 2 liter head. So that's the only head that actually makes sense to use. Of course it's missing everything, but Petri should have valves and springs and everything somewhere here. I'm thinking that we will take the lifters and everything from that 2 liter head, because if I remember correctly, that has really low mileage. It was something like 100,000 kilometers when I bought that 15 years ago. So I think we will get the lifters and buckets and everything from that head. And because it's M50 block, we need this. These are something that you nowadays need to search for, because you usually only get the full plastic ones as new. But those don't fit the old M50 block. So we'll need to probably use one of these. Then we have some chain sprockets and other stuff here. Oh fuck, now that isn't properly good anymore. Need to find best one of those too. I can see at least 4 of those here. Chains too, a lot of pistons too, few dampers here. Need to use one of those. We also need the dust cover here. And then where do we have the rear seal mount? And yeah, I think that's the front cover that we will use. Wonder why it's stuck there. Anyways, I think that we need to use that front cover and so on. Then we have some filter housings here, but there's one small thing in these, which is. But otherwise it looks that we have everything here. But let's look at one thing that is related to these filter housings. So I have this one here, not so common part. This is from Z4 with M54 engine. And those have same kind of electric power steering as our E81 has. but M54 did came out with power steering pump, so this is idler pulley that will replace the power steering pump. So we need to use this one. But because this is from M54, we need to use M52 filter housing as minimum to space out this correctly. So I need to search from the junk pile for one M52 filter housing. I think there's even ones with metal cap that should fit, but let's see what I can find. Point being that I just cannot take some random one, or well, I can, but then I would need to fabricate spacers for this. Well, in any case, I started looking for the best parts I could find for that engine. And cleaned up those, so that those would be ready for when Petri starts assembling the engine. I have dug through the parts bin, and here's the oil pan that Petri used to fit that engine. I'm pretty sure this is E36 oil pan, but I'm not 100% sure. But I think this is. The problem in this is that this is hitting the front subframe in this corner. We would need to bring the engine back so much that it would hit the chassis to avoid this hitting the subframe. So Petri has even marked here where to cut this. But I did manage to find that in the storage. I think Petri didn't want to even touch that because it's so nasty looking. But as you can see, it's totally missing the corner that hits the subframe. So I think we are going to use this oil pan. As far as I know, this is from E36 and this is from Singlevanos E39. I'm not sure, but I think so. So I'm thinking that I will clean this up and see does this fit the car better. We didn't seem to have this sprocket from Singlevanos engine, and actually not even the exhaust one either. But in that we can use the non-Vanos version. Only problem in that is that the timing of the cams is a little bit interesting. Everything needs to match perfectly and you need to do that without the bolts. But that's doable. And correct one of these was also missing. There was only few dual Vanos versions. Only real difference in these is that there is this flange here, because the movement is more in the dual Vanos engines. But there wasn't any other dual Vanos parts, all the rest are from the single Vanos. So I did just mashing out the flange here, so that this dual Vanos sprocket now works in the single Vanos engine. Like this here. And then rest of the parts go on top of this, like this. This should now work normally, nothing special in this. I did machine out this low enough so that it won't hit anything. Only the correct surface hits this, so I think this will work fine. And there we have a lot of parts. Everything should be. Well, everything is from our storage room. Everything I could find is from here already. Only thing missing is the oil pump nut. There wasn't good one anywhere. And well that's it. There was even set of head bolts, because this had been bought for wrong engine. But by luck those are M50 stock bolts and should be fine for this. Petri can start assembling this next time he comes here. The lifter buckets and lifters are still in that one head. I didn't have time to remove those, but those looked pretty clean. So those are missing here, but otherwise all is here. Well, some bolts are missing. I did most of those and cleaned them, but I'm running out of time, so Petri will most likely continue with the engine assembly next time. And here Petri did dig up all the valves and springs and parts for the heads, and looked up correct ones for this head. The head was totally empty from the machine shop visit, so he needed to assemble everything. Luckily we have the valve spring press, so assembling everything was easy. When head is assembled, it's time to work on the engine. This is basic stuff that you have seen many times on this channel, so let's move quickly. If you are more interested on assembling these engines, I have many older videos going through this in more detail. As a head gasket, we got the trusty Athena Cooper ring, which one we have always used, and those are super reliable. And the head bolts are those stock bolts, so no fancy ARP studs here. In my car those have been enough for years with quite high HP level. On last summer we did dyno 650 HP, so those are plenty enough for this too. The cams are basic stock cams from M52. Nothing special, but those are enough for the planet 4 to 500 HP we are going to take out of this. The head of course has been ported, and valve seats have better cut in them, so that will flow better than completely stock engine. that exhaust manifold is some old one from Petriste 1. Not sure if that's even the first and oldest one we have made for it, but looks like that the turbo manifold made for E30 also works in the E81 too. As a transmission, we will use the trusted 37 digit with really light flywheel from 1. So that's why that pilot bearing spacer is needed. For a clutch disc, we have 4-pack sintered one that should handle clutch kicks better than the organic one. Then we finish that up with the old and rusty 765 Sachs Race Engineering pressure assembly, and we can lift up the engine in the car. Kaasu päällä.
Oo.
Voi lähen kuulostaa sun. Se on aina se ylämäkkeen hissaaminen perseestä.
Ei tämä oo oikein näin.
Ei.
ei osoitettu lamppu siihen.
Vähän kääntää.
Vedetäänkö tuo kartta, niin näön vuoksi.
Ihan anna olla siinä, ei se haittaa mitään. Sypä ainakin tällaisen yksi kartaani oikealla laivalla.
Niin.
Ei tuu käytettyä mihinkään.
Niin. Tuo on tullut alas. Laatikko.
Mikä? Joo, ei ollutkin. Ja kumminkin on, ne pultit on kumminkin aika linjassa noitten kanssa tuossa. Niin.
Äkkiähän tuohon lisää toisen.
Niin, mutta
Toisen jos...
pääasiassa on sitä, kato kun tämä linja tässä, niin se nyt ei hirveästi poikkea tuosta. No, niin eiköhän se
lurpahtaako nyt?
No ei yhtään. Ei yhtään. Se rupee vuotamaan.
Tää on.
Joo. Eiköhän se.
Ei tää ei lurpsuttaa. Joo.
Mulla ei oikein mitään paikkaa mistä työntää. Oi vittu. No niin. Helvetti. Käsijarvikka se saattaa jopa toimia. Mukava on tosta lasista työntää.
Okay. Petri got the M50 in and the transmission is in and so on. We hopefully only need to touch those next time when we will really blow up something. But now it's time to start connecting this to the car. Petri can do all the coolant stuff and so on, and I will start working on the wiring. And well, my idea is to use the original wiring as much as possible, and I'll just add the new engine stuff here and so on. Let's first put back on the ECU box, now that the engine bay is clean and ready. I'll then start figuring out the wiring. There's probably a lot of extra that we don't need, like, well, yeah, but like for example these relays. I will use these as they are. But yeah, I haven't even checked the wiring diagrams yet, how everything works and goes. But let's put the box back in and I'll start figuring out this. As a ECU, I will use this maybe a little bit less known RM Primus from RM Racing Electronics. This should be quite capable ECU even though this isn't hugely expensive. And this is roughly like, well, Finnish people mostly talk max ECU, so this is roughly between the race and street of those. This has drive-by-wire support, built-in O2 controller and everything you need. Only thing this was missing was the CAN bus support for these E80, E90 and so on chassis, which is the BN2000 support. But that has been now added as a beta feature for me on this. It should come available for others too once it has been tested that it works. So this should now integrate directly with the car's CAN bus. This also has a beta version of the fuel pump control through CAN bus. So everything should work directly when I plug this in. This also came with the O2 sensor and other stuff. And this has been sponsored for me for this build, so disclaimer about that. So I haven't bought this, but this was sponsored for this build. This is available as a plug and play version for many, especially BMW engines, so no wiring need to be done. But I didn't have a single good condition wiring harness for M50. And of course nothing fits that car directly. So even good one would need some work. So I decided to get the universal wiring for this and make that work for the car. I have the car's original engine wiring harness here, which of course doesn't fit, but I'm planning to use the connectors and power feed side of this in the new wiring. So in practice, I will cut away all the original wiring to the ECU and leave the power wires here. So I get that from this. And no need to do all that from scratch. And of course everything that fits the car is left here. Then stuff that in and so on. But here's the bracket for the original ECU and I will put this in like this. But there's one interesting thing that this car has, and it's the auto start and stop feature that we won't be using, but for that there's this weird box, some DC to DC converter. And I investigated the wiring enough to say that this is quite difficult thing to take off from here. So I think we will leave this in the car and let's hope this doesn't cause any problems. If this does cause some problems, we need to bypass this. But I look at that you basically need to do a huge amount of changes to remove this. Basically you need to replace the whole junction box inside the car with the one that doesn't have the auto start and stop feature. So I decided that it's easiest to leave this in and use the car's wiring as it is for the ECU. The auto start and stop feature won't be in use after all this. In practice, we will leave out so many sensors from this that it won't activate at all. But taking out all of those extra modules requires too much work. So I will just leave those in and see how this will work. But let's start putting these in and then I will remove all the extra stuff from the wiring and then install that and so on. Let's start modifying the harness from the easiest part. This is one section of the original wiring harness. Here is some lambda sensors and maybe another one, or is that the throttle body or what? I don't know, it's the same connector. This is for the transmission neutral detection or what the fuck was even that. This is for the reverse switch and then we have some extra ones here. But we only really need the reverse switch connector in this one. This seems to snake around through various places, but I can just remove everything else from this and only need this for the transmission. And even this isn't mandatory, because this will be kind of race car, or well, we aren't going to race this, but this will be driven only on the track. So I don't think the reverse lights need to work for that. But that's so easy to do, so best is to leave that working. And yeah, this snakes around in the engine bay, but I thought that I will make this drop down immediately to the transmission. So this is bracket from the parts pile. And this is the one that is the back of the M54 engines, supporting all the wires and so on. These should be fitting here too. Yeah, at least close enough. So I will use that and shorten everything, and I will make the reverse switch to work. Okay, there isn't many wires left in that. These pins suck to get out of this, so I didn't bother removing those. But that's all there. I just need to measure the length and put new connector on the end. And this harness is done. And yeah, this is now done. This kind of simple harness to warm up before going in the deep end. But this can be now installed in the car and then we can start looking at the engine wiring harness. Let's then go to a bit more challenging part. This connector normally goes to the ECU, and actually that other one did also, because it had some sensors, but that's no more. But this one here goes to the car, and unfortunately there isn't any extra connectors here. This goes directly to the ECU. But this has the CAN bus, and I think this also has the wires for the pedal. This also has the cut switch and that kind of things, but I don't think that I will connect those, because we don't need the launch control. This isn't for track racing and so on. But we need the CAN bus and the 6 wires for the pedal. So I'm thinking that I will change 8-pin Deutsch connector to this, so that I can make the ECU harness separate from the car's harness, so that it can be removed from the car. I'll put the rest of the connector down here to be hidden. If I need something else from this, I can find it there. So yeah, CAN bus and pedal wires go to the Deutsch, and then from that to the Primus connector. So I get those into use. That's now there, and now we need to connect the rest of the engine wiring. These are all basically only control wires. Of course there are sensors and so on, but this is still missing like half of the wiring, like injectors and coils and so on. You only have the control wires here. But you also need the power and grounds and so on. So I will now tear apart the original wiring. I can get all the pass-throughs and other stuff from that. And in that there's also the power side too. So in practice all the powers and grounds we need is already there, and I can take advantage of that. So I will take that apart and replace the wires in that with this and see what else we need to do. And yeah, that's what I need to start doing now. So I'll take that apart now. Okay, I did do some work off camera. In any case, this is what was left of the original wiring. So in practice, only ground that goes here, and then the power wires from the car side. And that's it. These wires will get the 12 volts controlled by the DME relay. So ECU needs to power on that relay. And this cannot do it, so I need to do some tricks for that. Either I modify the junction box inside, or then I should have ground, actually 2 here. Then there's the wake up wire, so when ignition is on, that should have power. And then there's the DME relay control wire, which is one of these, which needs to be grounded to power on the DME relay. So I think I can add extra relay here, which will activate when the wake up is powered, and then ground that DME relay control. Or I will modify the junction box to do that directly. But let's see which one is easier. I think I can do that connection here, but I haven't looked into that in more detail. This green here is a power for the coils, and I have then connected the grounds to the ECU. There's many ground wires here. I have connected all of those because everything is basically controlled by grounding it, so this needs to have good grounds. Then I have this red wire here, which is constant power from battery. And then that one is power from DME relay for this ECU. So this is now connected to the car in power-wise. And then the signals too that we need. So now we are in the spot that we need to start connecting this stuff to the engine. So I'm thinking that I will separate the coil wires from this that will go on their own route. And actually I think there was even enough all these power wires, so I just need to separate the extra ones and stuff those to here. And then we can start working on the engine side. I can decide the power control side later. Oh, and then there's this one extra wire here. You can see the white wire there. That is for the starter. It's basically the only thing left from the original wiring that doesn't need to be modified. Okay, the wiring harness now looks like that. So it's basically fully connected to the car now there. Everything is ready, and if you ask me, that looks pretty good. Like nothing has been done, and it's all car's original wiring. Only that Deutsch connector tells that it's not 100% original. But I'm pretty happy for that. Everything showed correctly and so on. And there's actually this pneumatic hose here for the map sensor. It goes inside the wiring harness, so there's no need to run that separately. But at least for me this looks good now, and now this is in a state that I need to do the engine side. This may look like there's still most of the work left, and maybe that's true, but this is the easiest phase because I have done this many times. Just put on the connectors and so on. There is some extra wires there, but I did put all the wires in there just in case. I will just leave unconnected what I don't need. Maybe this is now enough for this first video. Engine is done and in there for good. Wiring is in good state, transmission is in, and brackets for that are done. So I think that will be it for the first video. I'm also running out of time to work here on the garage. So I think I will take the wiring with me and finish this up at home. I can see where all these wires go now, and I have engine there at stand, so I can do rest of the wiring there. And it will be ready next time I come here. But yeah, this is the new project that we have, and let's continue it in the next video.